Hello everyone and welcome back to Grateful Living Cruises. I'm Scott and I will be your host for today's video. Today we are talking about my first impressions of Royal Caribbean's Jewel of the Seas. I recently went on this cruise and I have lots of content coming out about her. But first, I wanted to start off with just what were my first impressions when I first went on the ship the first day. I do already have a lot of content out about Jewel of the Seas. I have a full ship tour, a full stateroom tour. I have a daily kind of informational / vlog, and a lot of that stuff is already up, but I thought I would come back and do more of a recap and let you guys know kind of what my thoughts were along the way. And then if you want to go back and look at more detailed videos, those are already there for you as well. So if you're new here, my name is Scott. My channel is Grateful Living Cruises, and this channel is dedicated to all things cruising over the age of 40 years old, cruising as a plus-sized person, and also oftentimes cruising solo. And we're just going to jump right into it today, you guys. So the first thing I want to talk about is the embarkation process, the process of getting onto Royal Caribbean's Jewel of the Seas. This particular sailing was out of the Fort Lauderdale area, and I had a very smooth operation. And I was really kind of shocked because, well, I had never been out of the Fort Lauderdale port before. I had been out of Miami many times, but not out of Fort Lauderdale. So anytime you're in a new port, you're kind of curious what is going to happen and what's new and what's different. I really didn't have any trouble at all. From the airport to the port was a very easy Uber ride. They dropped me off right at the front. It was really a good embarkation experience. Now, I did kind of get into a little bit of trouble, and you'll see what that is if you go watch my embarkation day video. I won't spoil it for you here. But other than that one little incident getting on the ship, I really had no issues at all. It was very smooth. There weren't a ton of people. It is a smaller ship, so, obviously not as many people trying to get on as if you're on a mega ship. But once boarding the ship, the first thing I remember thinking is, wow, this ship has a lot of charm. And I know it's an older ship, it's smaller. I've said that 1,000 times. But it was really charming. It had a stunning central atrium. It had the glass elevators, natural light. It felt very open and airy and surprisingly kind of elegant for a smaller ship, I guess in that old school cruise kind of way. It definitely gave me major boutique hotel sea vibes. So boutique hotel at sea, you get it. But anyway, so overall, the embarkation process and experience was great. And I just have a couple other things I want to talk about before we get to the high level pros and cons. At the end of this video, I will do some specific pros and cons. So stick with me to the end for those. So once on the ship and have done the muster station and all of that stuff, what is the first thing you do? You go find food because your staterooms are most likely not ready yet, and you're hungry and you're probably tired because of the stress of just trying to get to the ship. So my first stop for food was the Windjammer buffet. I do have a video already out there that has a full tour of the Windjammer buffet, but what I'll say is it was definitely better than I was expecting. So my first impressions of Royal Caribbean's Jewel of the Seas in the Windjammer buffet was that it was much better than I expected. It was super charming. The layout was very different than all the mega ships that I had been on recently. It had the same variety, but it had an easy layout. You didn't have to squeeze in between tables. There was plenty of seats. I really was pleasantly surprised with the Windjammer buffet, and it was just so different. And there's something about the Windjammer buffet I'll talk about at the end in my pros section that I really love. And you'll also, if you've seen my other videos, you probably already know what I'm talking about, but we'll get to that soon. So overall, my first impressions for food and dining was, okay, this is great, because even if it's the same food I have on every other Royal Caribbean ship, at least the atmosphere is different, the look is charming, and it was overall a pleasant place to be, for sure. Okay, so after you get full, your tummy is happy, you've rested up, you've waited around a little bit, they finally make the announcement that your cabin rooms are ready. So let's talk about my first impression of my room cabin on Jewel of the Seas by Royal Caribbean. Okay, so first thing I noticed when I walked in, and I have a clip of it here, I had an ocean view room. So no balcony, but I did have the little window, or the port window. It's kind of big, actually. So let's talk about the cabin. As soon as I walked in, that Frumpy couch just gave me the chuckles. I was like, I cannot believe this ship just recently had a refurbishment and they didn't even care about changing out this couch. But I know that they don't always do the rooms when they do these amplifications, as Royal Caribbean calls it, but that couch was kind of a hot mess. Not gonna lie at all. However, otherwise my room was wonderful. I had never stayed in an ocean view room before. I had always stayed in balconies prior to this, and that was a different experience, which I actually really liked. I have footage in one of my other videos where I did the room tour of like seeing the water going by. It was so nice. I really loved it. It was very peaceful. You were down low to the water, which was a different experience for me, and I really enjoyed all of that. Honestly, I had plenty of closet space. The bathroom was very plus size friendly. I had plenty of width on the throne, if you know what I mean. Some of the ships, it's like, you know, this, and it did not have shower curtains, which I very much appreciated. It had the glass doors. I have a whole room tour video out there, but just know my first impressions of my cabin, albeit a little frumpy. It didn't have all the new plugs and USBs and all this that the newer mega ships have, but it had exactly what I needed. It was cozy, it was relaxing, I was not cramped, and overall, I really enjoyed my experience in my cabin. So my first impressions really were, okay, other than the frumpy couch, I can live with this. That couch though, man, it was something else for sure. Okay, so let's talk about the public spaces. So by now we have gotten on the ship, we've done our muster station drill, etc. We've gone and filled our tummies at the Windjammer buffet and relaxed a little bit. We've checked out our room. Now it's time to explore the ship a little bit. And I do have a full ship tour here on my channel already, but let's talk about the highlights of the public spaces on Royal Caribbean's Jewel of the Seas. Basically, if you think about the ship being a smaller ship than a lot of the new mega ships, one thing you will notice is that the public spaces are cramped, but they're still charming and functional. There's not as many people on these cruise ships, and my sailing was only 4 nights anyway, so it's not like we were going to be on the ship for a long time. So I did notice like the pool areas and such were a little bit smaller than what I was used to on the mega ships, but also there were a lot less people. So it was kind of a trade-off, to be honest. And I will say that in terms of public spaces, the adult-only Solarium was like the perfect hideaway on Royal Caribbean Jewel of the Seas. It was not only just adults only, quiet, and etc., but the Jewel of the Seas Solarium has one of the most unique and, to me, beautiful themes, if you will, all Asian theme. It kind of looked like that you were in Asia. I mean, they had just how it was all set up. I have it in my video tour of the ship, but it was so cool. I even liked how the pool was set up. It was had plenty of deck loungers. It had, I didn't really ever have to fight anyone for a spot when I went in there to sit down. Overall, it was just a really cool and relaxing place. And it wasn't like any other solarium I had been on with Royal Caribbean, or any ship for that matter. So I thought that was a really cool area. And then, of course, the dining rooms and all the other public spaces were about what you would expect for Royal Caribbean. And the areas that they did renovate were actually very, very nice. And I don't know, the ship just really does have kind of that feeling of the old school charm mixed with the areas that they did update, which made it really nice. But yes, I really did love that. And then also there's another thing about the public spaces that's different, and we'll talk about that here in a little bit as well, because it definitely is unique and will save you some money. So we've explored the ship now. We've done all the things. Now it's time for some entertainment. And immediately I noticed that even though it's a smaller ship, they still had the itinerary packed with entertainment. Royal Caribbean always has a packed full agenda. And I kind of thought that since it was a smaller ship, it may not be the same, but I was wrong. There was tons of entertainment. And although it may not have been like the official Broadway shows, they had like all the Broadway type shows, live music, live dancing, very talented people, and the audience, albeit much more mature and relaxed. I actually appreciated that kind of downtime. It honestly felt a little like classy, if you will, and I really enjoyed that. It was so charming, it was so wonderful, and there was none of that spring break energy on this cruise that I was on. It was just a relaxing, classy, good time on Royal Caribbean Jewel of the Seas. So let's talk about now, as I promised, specific pros and cons regarding my first impressions on Royal Caribbean's Jewel of the Seas. Obviously, the pros are it had a very smooth embarkation process, minus that one thing I was telling you about, which you'll have to go see my embarkation video to see that. It had an immensely friendly crew. I mean, I don't know if it's because the ship was smaller or whatever, but immediately when I got on the ship, I could just tell the vibe was different. It had like a relaxed, classy vibe, the friendly crew members, the smooth embarkation. All of that had my first day and my first impressions thinking, okay, this is probably going to be a very awesome time on Jewel of the Seas. Also, I will say another pro about the ship this size. So it's a Radiance-class ship, much, much smaller than all of the new mega ships, which means it was much easier to navigate. You didn't have to spend the whole first day trying to figure out where everything was, which gave you more time to just enjoy the ship. I really appreciated that. And it wasn't until like later on in the day that I was like, wow, I've already explored the whole ship. I know where everything is. This was really great. So honestly, if you're looking for a calm and classic type cruise, then Jewel of the Seas definitely might be right for you. But let's talk a little bit about a few things that I would consider a con. So even though it had the updates recently, I do feel like the areas where they did not update, you definitely could tell that the ship was old and in need of some attention. For example, the couch in my stateroom, and there were other areas also, but overall, I really didn't mind it, and we just kind of made fun of the couch. Everyone I seen it, like my friends and stuff, I'm like, girl, look at this couch, but it didn't bother me. It was really more funny to me than anything, and I didn't spend much time sitting on the couch anyway, so I wasn't really worried about it. Also, like I said earlier, the pool areas are a little smaller. It's a smaller ship, so you can't expect it to be full of pool areas. So, that was kind of to be expected, but it was definitely something I noticed. And then also, if you are a fan of specialty dining restaurants, because it's a smaller ship, of course, there weren't as many specialty dining options. They did still have the main things that you find on just about every Royal Caribbean ship, like the main staple things, but it was a smaller ship, and so the options were not as vast as you will find on the mega ships nowadays. However, again, my sailing was only a 4-night sailing, and I actually ended up eating every evening in the main dining room, and it was delicious. So I really didn't even have a craving for that. It was only 4 nights. I had a wonderful time. I really enjoyed the Windjammer buffet for breakfast, and if you watch my videos about the everyday vlogs that I did, you'll know why I really enjoyed breakfast on Jewel of the Seas particular versus other ships. And overall, I ended up being just fine without the specialty dining. So I don't think it was a big deal at all, but it is something to be aware of if you're planning to go on Jewel of the Seas. You just have to remember she is a smaller ship, but with that comes a lot of really cool perks. And I definitely noticed those right away on my first day of being on her, and really not just noticing it, but feeling it. Like, I really felt different on this cruise ship, and I loved it. And I probably 100% will go again. And yeah, so I really enjoyed it. It definitely is a particular vibe. And if you're going on spring break, it probably is not your vibe. But if you're over 40 and you're just looking for a chill getaway, then I think you'll probably really love this ship. So anyway, that's it for my first impressions of Jewel of the Seas. Like I said, I have tons of other content already posted about this ship, and I have some other little review type things, tips and tricks, etc. that are coming. But if you're new here, I would love it if you would consider subscribing to my channel and liking my videos, especially if you found any value in the content that I have been producing, and hit that notification bell so that you'll know anytime I post a new video. My goal here is to always provide something of value for you, not just entertainment, but actually valuable information that you can take with you as you plan your cruise, and will help make your cruise a little bit better also. I also would like to know, after you subscribe, leave me a comment. Have you sailed on Jewel of the Seas before? Are you thinking about booking a trip on Jewel of the Seas? I would love to hear your thoughts, and we can just chat about it. And I am looking forward to what you guys think about her. Am I just crazy, the only one who thinks she's so charming? But hey, we all have our own thing, right? But leave it in the comments. We'll talk down there. We'll have conversations and get to know each other better. Again, I'm Scott with Grateful Living Cruises, and I remind you always to cruise gratefully, live fully, and love every wave along the way. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.